aka Neff. I am excited to be back here for another energy reading that I'm going to share. I did pull this reading that I'm doing today during fire ritual on the new moon, which was September 25th, but it's leading us into this October moon cycle, and I'm going to show the entire reading. If this is your first time here, welcome. This is going to be a Kemetic energy reading, which is ancient Egyptian or ancient African spiritual system. It is an oracle card reading based on a divination system that is not like your typical tarot. It's actually based on the houses, and it's the nature-based tradition of our ancient African ancestors. So welcome back to everyone who's returning. What I do every moon cycle, for those of you who are new here, is I share the first three cards of a Merkut reading. Merkut means pyramid in Medu Neter, or the hieroglyphic language. And that Merkut reading is made up of 10 different cards, and each layer of the Merkut or pyramid represents a different aspect of our experience. So what I share publicly is going to be the key to the reading, the fire principle, and it's also going to be the the magical mental body. So everything starts in spirit and then takes form in flesh. But as that energy comes down, it enters into our mental space first, which is our Ba, our magical mental body, and then it comes into our Ka, our emotional body, before it takes form in Ongeb, on the earthly physical dimension. So by getting that higher up energy, you're kind of getting a sense of what's going to influence and kind of come down to earth. If you want the full reading, you can join the militia. I will put that information in the description of the video so that you can join the militia. You can make a donation of any amount in order to have access to that exclusive artifact and all exclusive artifacts that will come forward for people who are members of the Tehuti Mountain Militia. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and show you the cards first, and then we will get right into the reading. Excuse me, let me flip this over. Okay. So you're looking at the cards here. Like I said, it's a 10 card reading, and this first layer is the fire element. This is the key to the entire reading. So all of the other energies that I'm going to read are based on that top card right there. We come into the mental body right here, which is the air. We come into the water, which is the emotions, and then the earth, which is our physical material reality, right? So today we're going to focus on these three cards. And I love sharing the bottom cards because it's just more practical, more tangible. So I do encourage you to join the militia if you want to see that. Okay. All right. So this reading is very interesting because the energy of October is already going to be I don't really like to use the word dominated, but it's going to be predominantly governed by Ma'at. Ma'at being truth, justice, reciprocity, symmetry, wholeness, balance. So that is Libra season, right? We typically know October is Libra season, which it actually began on the 22nd, which was the equinox period. So now, as we've reached equal day and night, our nights are going to extend more until we get to our next solstice, which will mark that peak point of night, and then the days begin to expand again. So equinox, the autumn equinox was a very significant point, or any equinox period was a very significant point for us ancestrally and for us now. It needs to become that way for us now because we have to orient ourselves to natural systems in order to be able to function in cohesion with nature, right? To be in sync with nature, we have to be able to synchronize. And the equinox is the perfect synchronizing moment because we have equal day and equal night. So it's that balancing moment. So a lot of us have been experiencing that energetically, emotionally, but very tangibly in our physical lives, right? So there may be some turmoil and things that have been coming up in order to balance out the scales. So the beautiful thing about this reading is it kind of has overarching around it that energy. So that's why I'm calling this "you will reap what you sow," because karma is an aspect of Ma'at, right? So when we think about Libra, we're just looking at the scales, but when we're talking about Ma'at, the symbolism of Ma'at is beyond the scales, right? You have the judgment scales, which is carved into temple walls to this day, and that scene, that judgment scene that's shown, you have the scales of Ma'at, but what is on the scales? You have the heart of the querent, of the one who is inquiring, or the person who has transitioned, the one in question. Their heart is on one side, and on the other side you have the ostrich feather, the feather of Ma'at, right? So now it's very important to remember that Ma'at is not only the scale, because the scale represents a particular aspect of Ma'at, right? The karmic aspect, right? What happens on one side, or what goes around, has to come back around. But it's also the heart itself and the feather itself, right? So because it's a symbolic language, that's the beauty of how it's able to incubate its sacredness. So that's not something that I'm necessarily going to interpret. It's something that really needs to speak to your heart. And it is your ability to understand it or comprehend it is going to be based on your own path, right? And where you are in your spiritual journey. So that being said, I'm going to start with the first reading. The first card, which is the most significant card. As I always say, anytime I do a reading, even if you book a personal reading with me, my main priority is I don't read cards the way other people read cards. I don't think that the oracle is about, or my work in particular, is not about delivering a message. It's more so about reflecting and illuminating something that's already inside of you. So ultimately what I want to do is activate your intuition. So what we do is a practice of exercising your intuition before I elaborate on the interpretation of the card itself and the symbolism. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the card, and what I would like to encourage you to do if you're watching the replay is you pause it, and I want you to take note of anything that comes up for you intuitively, right? The first instinct, because those are the most significant things that you want to take note of, whether it's words, colors, a certain aspect of the card, someone, a person, an experience, a memory, any of that that comes up for you during the reading, you want to take note of, right? So this card is in the house of Ta. The number is 6, 6 being representative of that nurturing, kind of like victorious energy that comes after the struggle of the 5. 6, you can think of 6 protons, 6 electrons, and 6 neutrons that make up the carbon compound, right? When we're talking about the chemistry of carbon, which the building block of life. So you can take that into consideration. I know many people who have been indoctrinated into Christianity may have a negative association with the number 666, but it is literally scientific. And a beautiful synchronicity. But when you think of 6, you know, in the context of its numerology, I just wanted to put that into perspective, because it's all based on the sequence of numbers. And remember, always whatever comes up for you intuitively. And this is this card is Akeru, right? Or Ma'akeru. Ma'akeru is to be true of word and deed. But look at the symbolism on the card, right? You have that lion energy, and there's this mirroring that's happening there, right? So remember, just put whatever comes up for you intuitively. For me, this card really symbolizes Sankofa, right? Sankofa is a Adinkra symbol, which is a symbol system that is created in West Africa by the Akan. And the Sankofa symbol, which many people see in one form as this heart-shaped symbol, but also it has another form which is like a goose, and it's looking back, and it has an egg in its mouth, but it's literally looking back over itself. So what it represents is going back to the future, right? You're going back to bring forward things from the past in order to inform your future, right? That egg representing the future, what is going to hatch, right? But that is a perfect paradigm to express the context of a holistic or Ma'at perspective that our ancestors have had, that we must reclaim, our cosmic consciousness of eternity, because there is no past, present, or future. When you're dealing with Sankofa, it literally brings it all together, because you are where you are right now in the present because of all the choices from the past. And you are creating in the present what will be your future. If you create a dichotomy, or we keep moving within this Eurocentric paradigm that splits and separates everything, and we look at them as separate things, you begin to fragment your reality, and you become unable to process the continuum of space and time, right? Because everything is a continuation of what was before, and everything happens in cycles. So ultimately, that is the wisdom of this card. But what the card represents in itself, like its divinatory meaning, is that it's about journeying, right, through space and time. And because this is the key to the entire reading, this is kind of like what's going to be intrinsically happening, because like I said, it's ma'at, so you're reaping what you've sown. So everything from the past, everything that you've sown, everything that you've done, everything that you've thought, all these things are going to be resurfacing and become relevant right now. It's about the continuity of time, but it's also about remembering the past so that you know how to act in the present. Okay? And this is guiding the entire energy of this moon cycle. Now, the next two cards, as I said, we're going into the air element, which is the mental expression of energy. This is just the energy that's present, right? So it's all indwelling within us. But when you have a predominantly, specific energy present, you can tap into that. If you're conscious of it, you can meditate on it. You can invoke or evoke the energy in particular ways. You can be more attentive to the energy and be more in alignment with the energy. I call that being in your state of float. Some people say flow state. I say float because you're allowing yourself to just go with the current of energy. When you resist that current and you move out of alignment with energy, you can become exhausted because you're like literally swimming against the current. So that's how you conserve your energy, and that's the wisest way to position yourself. So the fact that you're even watching this reading is very significant. Everything happens for a reason. So take that into consideration as you move through this October moon cycle, because this information is very key to supporting you in your process of facing your own spiritual self in this moon cycle. Okay, so this card, I'm just gonna leave it here for a second so you can actually absorb it and take it in, because there's a lot of obviously dark symbolism here. And I don't say dark with that ego context of it being a negative or bad thing. It's just dark, right? You cannot have dark without light. That's what ma'at is. It's up and down, it's left and right, it's dark and light, and that's what's representing heavily in both of the cards that are in the mental body right now for this moon cycle, because it's very important for us to recognize that the light has to be birthed from the darkness. So there's a lot of illusionary states, a lot of false light that's present because people are not doing the real work to confront the darkness, to actually go into the darkness, to go into themselves, to do the true work that we have to do, the true healing, right? Coming into our families, dealing with the things that we really have to deal with in order to truly move authentically from an alchemized state where the light was actually genuinely produced, right? So there's a lot of that right now. But the great thing is, as we move into Ma'at season, is the scales get balanced and a lot of things begin to reveal themselves, because it's all about the truth coming to light. Okay, so whatever came up for you intuitively, very important to take note. This position of this card is like kind of like thoughts and ideas that are still having an influence on us right now. So it's kind of this heavy energy that was present in September that's continuing to flow in, this energy that really wanted us to detach. If you didn't watch the reading from the last moon cycle, I do encourage you to watch it, because I talked a lot about that, letting go of the attachments. And what that is causing is a void, right? A space, right? When you remove things, you create a void. You have this space that you can enter into, right? And that's the darkness where we really have to move into. And what this card represents is a 7 number. So that's the number of sacredness, divinity. And it's in the house of the Duat. The other one was in the house of the earth, Ta, the family of the earth. This is in the family of the Duat. The Duat is what in Western mysticism they call the eighth sphere. It is the underworld, the shadow realm, right? Where all the evil and darkness exists, the hell. You know, there's so many different ways that people have been, that this has been expressed. And depending on where you are in your journey, you know, you may have an expression of this in a different way. But the important thing to note is that this is part of our reality. It's part of our journey. It is also all of the astral spaces of darkness that exist. So when we go into sleep state, right, when we close our eyes, when we go into dream state, it's a cosmic thing, right? It's a you know, space is dark, the womb is dark, right? And it's kind of like that portal that we have to go through between lives, right? So there's a lot of different interpretations of what the dua is, but it's important because this boat of Ra, the sun, the solar boat, the solar bark is moving through the abyss. And that's how we expressed it ancestrally in our mythology, is that the boat of Ra, or Ra, had to go through the Duat, or Amenta, the west, because the sun sets in the west, right? It goes to rest in the west, and it has to go through those 12 hours of the night to come and be rebirthed on the east, right? When the sun rises in the east each day. So these are micro and macro symbolism. So you can think about it on a day-to-day, but you could also think about it as a lifetime thing, right? Because it's all cycles. You have micro cycles and you have macro cycles. So this is actually specifically the 4th and 5th hour of the night, which is considered to be the darkest point of a cycle. Where in the mythology, the light of Ra, which is the only thing that can shine as the boat of the deceased is moving through that darkness, at the 4th and 5th hour, not even that can penetrate that thickness of darkness. And it is like a fire that is coming out of the serpent boat, right? Remember, this is symbolic. This is deeply symbolic. That is what is able to shine through that period. Now, this represents really the lowest point in the cycle. It could even represent illness and suffering. So you could think about mental illness and mental suffering in this context, because this is in the air element. This is dealing with our mental body, our mental reality, our mental state. And it's whatever's coming in from and continuing from the previous cycle. So it may be things that have been coming to surface that have to be dealt with. And a lot of people call this the dark night of the soul, you know. And some people are, even if you've experienced that already and you've already had your awakening, it's kind of like a micro, like a mini dark night of the soul that's happening again because of a major cosmic clearing that's happening right now, that's very rare and very significant in this particular time that we're existing in right now. So you can look at the symbolism again. And I just wanted to mention that it's really about, you know, it's the darkest point. It's the darkest point. And that's the space we have to go into, because it holds the keys to be able to birth the light. And then the third card, which represents the energy that is kind of moving us forward, the energy we really want to tap into and kind of move forward into, or pull into us, and maybe concentrate more so on that horizon, is this energy. Tepe Ayun is the house that it's in, which is the primordial house. So we're talking about primordial energy, which is energy that existed before existence, before the physical forms of the different aspects of nature that we know through our physical earthly experience, right? We know about the air, the atmosphere, the grass, right? The trees, and the different aspects of nature and forces of nature that are in that context. But the primordial energies are the ones that existed beyond this solar system and beyond this particular you know, tangible world, right? So it's the essence of energy. And it's taking us to the symbolism of the 5, which 5 represents change. It also can represent challenge and struggle. But that is ultimately what strengthens us, right? So it's a strengthening number, a power number. And Keku is the energy. You see it's symbolized by an amphibian. You can pause it here again, just a reminder, just to think of and take note of whatever comes up for you personally, intuitively. And even as I'm speaking and interpreting the energy, anything that comes up specifically, you do want to take note of those things. If there's a person, a situation, right? I think that's very, very important. So, Keku, or think about the vibration and the sound, right? Because it's right? It's just like another neteru, or force of nature, right? That they misnomer as gods and goddesses. These are just forces and natural energies that exist, right? The vibration is very important. So shu is the air, but think about it, right? Our tongues, as my elder Baba Heru, my spiritual father, always says, our tongues have been put to sleep. But it's that, think about the sound of that. The amphibians are significant because they existed within the waters, and they were the first creatures that were able to adapt into the terrestrial nature that began to come up as you had the mound of Ptah coming up, and you had the creation of land and all these other dynamic aspects of nature as it revolved itself. So that's part of the symbolism as well. You see that Kepra, the beetle overhead, representing transformation, right? And that cup. And it's very interesting because when you deal with Nut, which is like the cosmic womb or the cosmos, the space, the heavens, the vessels that is represented by within the Meruneta, or the symbolism of that name, is meant to hold for a long period of time, whereas these vessels are meant to hold something to be used immediately. And it actually represents the immediate transformation of a situation, light being shed on a perplexing issue or problem. And this particular energy is significant because it literally represents transformation, but it's about obscurity, because these are primordial energies of darkness, Keku and Kekut, right? Within the Meruneta, within I shouldn't say the Meruneta, within the original pre-colonial African traditions, you always have complementary energies. There's an active and receptive principle, or what we often call masculine and feminine principle. So you have Keku and you have Kekut, and they are both partnered to represent this primordial darkness, right? And this is where you have the light that is shed, right? And it's a transformation in potential. You know, that's what I kind of noted personally as I was doing the reading. That I wanted to just like look at my notes real quick and see, but yeah, it's the end of obscurity. And when I say immediate transformation of a situation, is sometimes once we go into the darkness, we can finally see what we were afraid of, right? What we didn't want to see, because that's where really the treasure is. And we have to remember that we chose the experiences that we're going to have. We are part of divinity. That is part of us reclaiming our power, is knowing that we don't have to look outside of ourselves for divinity. Divinity is in, through, and all around us. So within trusting that truth, right, coming back to Ma'at, because that's really what has to guide us energetically through this moon cycle, we have to know that every choice that we make and every circumstance and situation that we attract and we align with is divine in its own right. So we have to give ourselves that due diligence, right, of trust, to be able to really respect the reality that we've chosen, okay? And that's why we have to reap what we've sown, right? So that we can continue to learn and grow and experience. If we didn't have that degree of accountability cosmically, energetically, and experience that in the physical, we would have disorder, and that's what we're coming out of, that's what we're moving away from. But that order always exists, even within the system and constructs that are created that are not in balance, that are not in ma'at. Doesn't change the fact that the universe, right, the multiverse operates within that order, and everything has to come back around at some point, you know. So that's what's happening right now, is we're seeing the ramifications and the harvest of what we've sown. So depending on what your situation has been and how you've been navigating your life and the choices you've been making, that's exactly what you're going to experience. And for a lot of people, that's going to be a very challenging reality, because, you know, we've been making a lot of excuses and I should say, many people have been making choices that really are going to reflect a bit negatively from an ego perspective, because we have to remember that saying, right? The pride goeth before the fall. And we are now officially in the autumn season, in the fall. And that pride representing that Leo energy, right? Which was that August energy that we were in, right? So it's all symbolic, but it's very significant, because in order to have that dark night of the soul, it is the ego death that we must experience in order to have true resurrection and rebirth, which was what was characterized in September. So that energy is going to continue to lead us through October, and we're going to move into that spark of transformation, or kepera. And I encourage people to join Tehurimad Academy so you can have access to the October report, which is going to have a lot of great resources. Our Kepra challenge, which is going to allow you to go through a 28-day, very, very, very powerful transformation challenge, where it's holistic, plant-based, and you're going to focus on nourishing yourself optimally and limiting your intake of external stimulus and other ideas and stuff, because we really have to gear ourselves to go internal and to stop relying so much outside of ourselves for guidance and information, because ultimately it's only going to make things take longer. And if you just go right into the darkness, right, if you just dive right in and have the courage to do that, it really does shorten the amount of linear time it takes to actually have that realization, and it minimizes the suffering. Because another quote that I love is, pain may be inevitable, but suffering is a choice. So I want to encourage you to go inside yourself. That is always my message. Go inside. And I am just a reflection of you, and I always just give you back your power the same way that I always retrieve mine. And I hope that you continue to have a blessed and authentic expression of life. And yeah, we'll see you back next time. All right, power.